For Toby Frieden, and I'm joined, of course, by Dr. Chetna Kang. I thought you could do your own bit there.
I thought you were going to introduce
Just
me.
relaxing. You got to do some work. Honestly. Unbelievable. We are talking this afternoon, about acquired brain injuries. We started the programme speaking to Nigel Rogers from Letchworth, who had a brain injury at the age of 15 years old doing his paper round. He was hit on his bike by a transit van. And something I was particularly struck by, Chetna, is the fact that as a 15-year-old boy, like all 15-year-old people, boys and girls, you have dreams, you have aspirations, you have some kind of a limited vision of the direction your life might go in, and of course it could be very wrong. But it's for him, he's now in his 40s, and he's had to learn to do some of the most basic things again. And I got the sense from speaking to Nigel that really the challenges now for him, the things that make him happy, are being alive, being able to live on his own, being able to walk and look after his son. And actually your aspirations can really change. But I know we're joined on the programme now by Melanie Riding. Melanie was a special needs teacher in Bedford, but suffered a brain injury in a bike accident. And since then, you may not believe this, she's gone on to compete at the World Triathlon Championships, and she joins us from her home now in New Zealand. Good afternoon to you, Melanie.
Good afternoon, Melanie.
Good afternoon.
Melanie, I understand is it good night for you, actually, where you are?
It's good evening, yes.
It's good evening. Well, thank you for staying up for us to share your story. Can you take us back to actually what happened when you had this bike accident? How many years ago was that?
It's July 2011, and the run-up to the day that this incident happened, I had the day before paid for my flight and accommodation to the World Championships in China, which was in September of that year, probably mostly non-refundable, and I had committed myself to travelling around the world to compete for Team GB in triathlon. So
how did the accident actually occur, Melanie?
I went out for a normal bike ride on a Saturday morning. I lived on the Northamptonshire-Bedfordshire borders, so I cycled all around the countryside there. This was a regular route. I would always take a phone, and I would always give my husband a rough idea of my route so that he knew how long I'd be gone and when to expect me back in case something happened. He regularly would get calls from me saying, I've got a puncture, I need you to rescue me, or it's now hammering down round here, can you come rescue me, or, these sorts of things. So he was quite expecting that sort of call. It was a drizzly day. I had dressed accordingly. I was only 15 minutes down the road, and I can tell you the sequence of events from what people have told me, but I can't remember the incident at all. I've lost about 5 hours of that day in my memory. Yeah. But I was approaching a roundabout. I'm about 50 metres from the roundabout, braking to turn left at this roundabout. That's my last memory. A passing motorist found me unconscious in the roundabout, and to begin with, she thought that it was one of those staged accidents where someone might jump out of the bushes and nick her car or something. Luckily, she decided to stop and realised that wasn't the case. She called 999, and a policeman turned up. They found my phone. By this time, I believe I was conscious but completely incoherent. My phone had one number saved in its favourites, ICE, which is my husband, and that was the number the policeman called. And my husband answered it, expecting it to be me, saying, I've got a puncture, I need you to rescue me. And instead, he got a call from a policeman saying, we've just found your wife, I think you should come down.
Melanie, you said you lost about 5 hours of memory from that day. What do you remember afterwards? What was your experience of being in hospital? What were you aware of?
I've got some very disconnected snippets of memory from being in hospital. Uh-huh. I remember being in the back of the ambulance, and it's literally like a light flashing on and off sort of memory. I remember being in the back of the ambulance, and I remember people bustling around. The next thing I remember, I'm in a cubicle, but I wasn't entirely sure where that was. There's lots of people, lots of noise. I'm lying flat on my back, and I can tell that someone is nearby. And they're talking about having to cut my top off, and I still can't quite work out what's going on.
Sure.
They did a CAT scan, and I remember the noise of the CAT scan machine, but I didn't realise that's what it was. I remember seeing my name on a board with the word triage next to it, and at the time couldn't work out what that meant.
So how long did you spend in hospital in total?
I was only in hospital the weekend, and to be honest, when they sent me home, I couldn't walk in a straight line.
Gosh.
So I don't know, I felt really vulnerable when I left.
Yeah.
I preferred to have been lying on their hospital bed for a bit longer.
Yeah. So you said you couldn't walk in a straight line when you left hospital. What else do you remember not being the same as it was before when you left hospital? What else was different when you got home?
My memory, my short-term memory was very much affected. I could only remember things in sort of 10-minute snippets.
Right.
So I started a blog because I wanted to reassure myself that things were actually getting better.
Right.
And I couldn't have told you what happened last week, yesterday. So I wrote it all down so that I could read it back and prove to myself that things were getting better.
Yeah.
So
power to you, self-help.
Can I ask you, Melanie, because I know that obviously you're very fortunate you had a husband, and you know, we tend to support our partners as best we can, but to have such a short memory, it must have made you at times quite a frustrating person to live with.
Yes, we had lots and lots of arguments because he was struggling to understand it all. The thing with a head injury is my arm hasn't fallen off. It doesn't look like there's anything wrong with me. So therefore, I must be all right, surely. And that's the thing that I found the most frustrating. People would look at me and go, "Oh, I'm so glad to see you've recovered."
Sure.
When
I mean, other than memory, anything else did you experience as being different, which might not have been obvious to other people?
For about 2 months, I felt like I was on the deck of a ship in a stormy sea.
Gosh, okay.
It's okay when you've been on a night out and you're a bit drunk and you know, and there was some type of pleasure involved, but when it was not by choice and you get that for 8 whole weeks, it's just no fun at all. I would suddenly feel very, very tired. Fatigue came along in tidal waves and was completely unexpected. You know, I'd be feeling really tired at funny times of day and then not be able to sleep during the night.
Melanie, can you tell us, I mean, since then you have competed at the World Triathlon Championships. Absolutely amazing achievement. It's like whatever you were intending to set out to do that day, you had the accident, you didn't let it, you know, the accident and the head injury stop you from continuing. So tell us about going from a place where you're literally feeling like you can't walk in a straight line, you can't remember what happened 10 minutes ago, gone from that to then completing the World Triathlon Championships. What were the stages and how did you get through all that?
Well, I beat myself up for quite a while about the fact that I couldn't remember the day. I still can't remember the day. A psychologist that was monitoring me for the months afterwards described it like you imagine you're watching a video on an old VHS recorder and then somebody came along and hit it with a hammer. You wouldn't expect the video to have been working at the point which it was hit by a hammer, maybe a bit before and maybe a bit after. And when she described it like that, it sort of made me feel a bit better. It wasn't like I'd lost something and I was trying to find it. I just didn't ever have it. Right. So I just kept on writing blogs to convince myself that things were getting better, and I would look back over last week and look at all the tiny steps that I was making to go forwards. I couldn't change the day and the incident, and I don't know if a car hit me or whether I just fell off. I have no idea. I never will know. But it was looking forwards rather than backwards that was my focus. I'd already paid for that plane ticket to China, and I was going to be standing on that start line if it was the last thing I did.
How long did you have physically to get yourself back in shape? And were you nervous about getting back on a bike?
I wasn't actually nervous about getting back on a bike. I wanted to get back on a bike sort of like the very next week. And my husband was like, no, you're not doing that. But I'm a bit like that. A couple of weeks later, he allowed me to sit on the turbo trainer, which is a machine you strap to the back wheel of your bike, so it allows you to pedal it stationary. Yeah. And he sat me in the garden and monitored me to make sure I was all right. But No, getting back on the bike didn't scare me. What I was worried about is the dizziness was the thing that got me the most, and it would come and go, and then as time passed by, I'd get dizzy spells when I was least expecting them, and I was just hoping when I sat on the start line that I'd be able to get to the finish line.
And can I ask, what interested me in our earlier conversation we had this morning at the beginning of the programme, just after midday, we spoke to a gentleman, Nigel. He had his injury at 15, and he's now a fully grown man, and of course your personality changes anyway from being a teenager to being a fully grown adult. With you, because you were already an adult when you had this accident, have you noticed, or has your husband noticed, that the injury has affected your personality in any way?
Whilst I was recovering from the head injury, most definitely, he would tell me that I was being extremely irrational at times, or lots of intense mood swings and things like that. Unfortunately for me, I had another bike accident a few weeks ago and another head injury. This one isn't as bad as the last one, but at least I know this time round.
Melanie, what are you doing? What happened this time?
I decided, I'm going back to triathlon, because I decided that I would try road racing, and I was in a group in a road race, and, well, you've seen it in the Tour de France, haven't you? When one person goes down, the entire peloton goes down. It was kind of a bit like that. So I've broken 2 bike helmets, but I'm still here and I'm still alive.
But can I ask you, because I listen, I really admire what you're doing, to have gone through what you have and to be back on your bike and working hard, and you're obviously very good at it, to be at the level you are, and credit to you. At any time, did any members of your family say, it's quite irresponsible what you're doing, because you're kind of putting your own enjoyment of your sport and challenging yourself ahead of perhaps your family? You're putting yourself in some quite dangerous situations.
I have had that sort of thought with this more recent one. That was kind of a bit more like that. The first one, I have no idea what happened. It may just have been me in the roundabout and a slippy bit of the road. I have not got a clue. There's no point in going through that and speculating about what might have been if I had done this and that.
But you have to accept that you are more vulnerable now than any other cyclist out there because of the injury you've suffered.
Yes, and when I was taken to A&E a few weeks ago, they were worried. Apparently, I didn't realise this, head injuries can compound even across that many years. So 2 or 3 years later, that the effects can still compound. So I guess I ought to start looking after my head a bit more.
Well, I don't know. It's entirely up to you and your family, but yeah, I'm sure we all hope you do look after your head. What lays ahead? Pardon the pun. That wasn't the pun. That was an accident. What lays ahead for you now? Has the aspirations you had, the things you wanted to achieve within the sport, do they remain the same? Do you still think you're able to achieve what you hoped you'd be able to strive for?
I don't know. But then you're not going to know unless you try, are you? You can live your whole life on what ifs, but you only get one life.
Melanie, so those initial symptoms that you described, the memory loss or the short-term memory and the dizziness, those have gone now, have they?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So would you say, for all intents and purposes, your functioning is back to how it was pre the accident, or is there still a bit more to go?
No, I would say I had a 100% recovery, which is lucky. I'm lucky. Not everybody is that lucky.
Well, listen, thank you so much for staying up late in New Zealand to speak with us on Shrink Wrap today, Melanie.
Thank you, Melanie.
And we shall follow you with interest from a distance as you continue your racing. And thank you for putting up with that slightly iffy line, guys. It's a line from New Zealand, but I think we all got a clear understanding of Melanie's situation there, Melanie's story. Coming up next, we're going to be speaking with Professor Mike Barnes, who is an expert in